Greetings, Kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to our World of Darkness, and a special video today. What we're doing today is answering some community questions. Now, I put this out a little while ago, asking if there were any questions, and I got some pretty darn good ones. I actually got 10 questions total. Looking forward to answering them. But I went to a convention a little over a week ago, and I had a blast. I went to SpaceCon in Fort Myers, Florida at the German American Social Club, and I got to meet a lot of really nice people, a few of which were storytellers and gamers that I actually just got into some out-of-character, conversations with, being able to talk to them about methods, how they do things, how I do things, and I was very shocked to see that I apparently have methods and storytellings that other storytellers just didn't consider. And that got me thinking that you all might have some questions. So I went ahead and I put out the call to action to see if anybody had any questions. And that's what we're going to go do today. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into those. I'm answering these questions in order of when they were given to me. We don't have any repeat questions, and 5 of the questions came from one person. So thank you, DJ, from our Patreon, for filling out this list a little bit, because I really was hoping to not do any less than 10. So we'll just start with Gerard Decker asks, how do you prepare yourself for combat scenes to prevent having to dive into the books to break the tension? Well, that is, you can ask my players, is I typically don't. I'm not afraid to just call times and check out the books when needed. And I actually find that sometimes that does add to the tension if it's done out loud for everybody. When you stop and you read the books, it makes everybody feel like time in the combat is ticking. And it's interesting to listen to it go from, okay, we're doing this, to all of a sudden, let me check to see this book, and things like that. I do try to make the reference time as short as I possibly can. I'm actually not very good at memorizing the page numbers, unfortunately. The funny thing is, the old Laws of the Night books that were printed in the late 90s, in 1999, I have the pages memorized for those books still, and have not been able to do that for the V5s. So the index is my friend, which in most World of Darkness books, historically, the indexes are horrible. Being able to try to find them, finding out what things are actually marked under. So another thing that I do tend to do is on my books themselves, I do put tabs that say what everything starts on, just to make it go that much faster. Last night, we introduced a new player into our Thicker Than Water Chronicle, and there were some, going back and checking what the powers do and things like that. Not to mention we're playing newer characters right now, so the lower level disciplines, which tend to fall by the wayside, especially since they're playing different clans also, it's nice to go back and double check from time to time exactly what they're supposed to be doing and how they work. So I don't, when it comes to thinking that it's going to break the tension, it doesn't really ever seem to, at least at my table. I've story told for quite a few people, and I've always tried to take the time of, okay, you're doing this. Let's stop and remember to see exactly what it does. It is a good idea, however, to utilize materials such as the World of Darkness 5th edition deck that has the disciplines all printed on them. You can use index cards to make sure that each player has their stuff. In an old game that I used to run, attached to the character sheets was a listing of what disciplines they had and how those specific disciplines work. So they had their own reference sheets so that we didn't have to flip through the pages and things like that. In fact, I might actually go back to doing that, because that was incredibly useful to have. And you can find blank templates that match the character sheets if you're like a perfectionist and you need to have like exactly what's like the border of the character sheet being the border of the reference sheet so that the character sheets look all nice and pretty. If that matters to you, those resources are available. Sorry, I don't have a surprising mnemonic device out there that's helping anything. But aside from just like having quick reference tools such as the books on your phones, the Vampire Nexus, if you're willing to put money into having the books digitally so you can have a laptop on your table. I have a laptop on my table when I storytell. Primarily, that's just for recording the sessions. But access to the internet to be able to get on there and check things rapidly without flipping through pages could also come in handy. Dega Vertigo asks, the bane of many games I've seen is when a player is absent unexpectedly. What kind of contingency plans or strategies do you use in those situations? That does suck. Always. When somebody can't make it to game for one reason or another. We've had people who have not been able to show up, who will show up like an hour or two late because the real world gets in the way and the game starts without them. We actually have one player who is not at game on a monthly basis. If we play once a week, once a month they go to a different game out of town. So this is something that we actually have to deal with on a regular basis. For the most part, I try to do self-contained stories. On the rare occasion, I will do this night is carrying over to another night, where it's like, oh, we're playing in a session and it's midnight and the next session will be midnight to sunrise or something like that. But for the most part, I try to do full stories where the characters will at least get to rest and at least have a little bit of willpower revival and things like that for the games, the ability to heal if high physical tension is happening. When it comes to the characters who are just not there the next week, I try to come up with the character a reason why their character is unavailable. Currently, right now, we have a Nosferatu who is in the game, and I swear I'll get back to recaps as soon as I can. But right now we have a Nosferatu in our game who is exploring under the city through the Shanghai tunnels in Portland, Oregon. And when she is not available, because it's being played by Abilene, who is also Tinia's player, that's the excuse, is this character is obsessively checking underneath the city to explore and find things of interest that could help the coterie that she's playing in. Other times it's if it's a Tremere or a Hecata, they're taking their time to study and learn a new ritual or something like that to try and to try to excuse away that they're the reason they're not there. We try to come up with an in-character reason. Now, in the very rare situation where we're in the middle of a game, something suspenseful happens, I end up having to call post, and we're going to pick up the next week, and somebody doesn't get to come because they're sick, or real world events pop up, or something like that. We've had that situation before, and hopefully I know about it in advance, at least by a couple of hours, in which case I communicate with the player to find out exactly how we want to handle the situation. Is the fateful falling rock coming down from the ground and knocking the person out? Is a shadow portal going to open up and yank them from this room to another so that the other players have to find them? I do my best to not have to play other people's characters. I don't like doing that. I don't feel that I can portray their characters properly. Not that I'm saying that it's going to be bad, but I just don't feel it's going to have the same heart. I'm not going to have the same goals and wants that they are when playing their characters. So we try to find a way to remove them from the situation in the game. And I mean, I've gone through that kind of situation before, where like we're going to end up having that person taken away really quick. One that I can actually think of that happened was when one of our players was going to be leaving the state for a couple of weeks, and we were in the middle of a very intense hunter situation. What ended up happening is, on the night that was supposed to be his last night for a few weeks, he got caught in an explosion. One of the hunters had thrown a grenade, a tunnel had collapsed on him, and he had been torpid. Luckily, the roles aligned with that, but even if they hadn't, I would have gone story over drama, and tried to had it. I basically would have had the same situation happen anyway. This character was in torpor for as long as his character came back, and then eventually had someone to wake him up. So that's kind of how I handle those situations. You got to obviously make sure that it's right for the situation that your characters are in themselves, but trying to find some in-game way that you and your players, sometimes not just the player experiencing it, but to make sure that it's fair for the other players as well, does need to happen. Maybe you and your players could actually agree that you could play that character as an NPC while they're gone. But given the range of chance that could happen, I personally wouldn't do that. I'm more along the lines, just want to find an in-game reason to remove them from those scenes. Abilyn McMullen, our very own Tinia Jabbar, asks, what tips do you have for absolute newbie ST to help run a session run smoothly? I'm going to give you a couple of suggestions. First off, know your city. If you're making up your city, you can make up your city, but keep in mind what is typically where. What's the bad side of the neighborhood? What would be over there? Is there an industrial district? That kind of thing. The city is probably one of the most important NPCs that you can have in a game. It's living, it's breathing, and sometimes it's a bigger monster than the players. The other thing is completely ripping off something that I just heard in an interview with Jason Carl. The two most important things that you can have to make your game run smoothly is on the SPC's character sheets, which is their ambition and their drive. All characters, including your NPCs, SPCs, need to have some goal in mind. A goal for tonight, a goal for tomorrow, a goal for 1,000 years from now, because they're immortal. Understanding exactly what those characters' wants are, and making sure that you as a storyteller do whatever it takes when you're playing those SPCs to achieve those goals in an intelligent manner can be a make or break of your story. Your players are there to fulfill their desires, their ambitions. Your SPCs are there to fulfill their own. And you have to understand that sometimes those are going to intersect. Those are going to be, could this new neonate be a bane to my goals? Could this new neonate be a boon to my goals? Finding out how your SPCs are going to utilize your player characters is going to be your strongest thing. That and organization. Organization's a big thing. I suggest getting a 3-ring binder for this game. For if I run multiple games, I have different folders and 3-ring binders for each game. Keep your character sheets. Make character sheets for your SPCs. Make sure that they actually have them and that you stick to them most of the time. Sometimes you might feel the need to make something happen and your characters get a boost in power. Sometimes you might feel that your characters need to be nerfed a little bit for a specific situation. Try to have a plan, but don't be afraid to veer from it if it's better for the story. That really is my best advice for a new storyteller. Also, don't be afraid to seek inspiration from outside stories. If you see a movie that has a plot line that you think would be amazing for a story in Vampire the Masquerade or Hunter or Werewolf or whatever story you're running, Pathfinder, D&D, whatever, those can be amazing storylines. Those, make them your own, but find the spirit of those stories. That is very important, is to know where you're going. Now, different types of stories are going to have different types of ways of running them. We're all excited and ramped up for getting Laws of the Night from By Night Studios. I'm super excited because LARP was a massive part of my city, and when the pandemic hit, it kind of killed it. And this is a chance to get that running again. When you're running a LARP, it's a lot different because it should focus primarily on what the player characters are doing. Build your game, LARP or tabletop, build your game and their NPCs based off of the relationship map that your characters have in the games. I personally don't use a physical relationship map, but I do have a list of everybody's allies, everybody's enemies, who their sires are, who their mentors and adversaries are. Like, these things are what's going to bring your game together and make it into a legitimate world and not just a flat scene to have the characters run around and fight things on. Because Vampire is so much more than just, there's a thing that's bigger than us, let's kill it. Werewolf is so much more than, there's a thing that is worm-tainted, let's kill it. It really is how those things in the world affect the world and what you plan to do about it. Cornelius Persons 1230 asks, how do I change the minds of people about V5? Because I'm thinking about storytelling in an area where there's a lot of V20 players that don't seem to like the changes in the World of Darkness. I completely understand. There's a divisive split between people who want to stay with the V20 world and people who want to stay with the V5 world. I personally am not a huge fan of V20 that much. I don't like little things about it that build up in my mind. I'm petty. And I also don't really care for the intense work in mechanics that V20 offers. V20 is a great system, and it's just not for some people. V5 is a great system, and it's just not right for some people. You can't really change anybody's minds about it other than saying, hey, I want to do this. Do you guys want to give it a try? You're going to get a lot of slack from it, and that's just how it's going to be. But I do have players who prefer V20. I have players who play in other games that are V20. All you can really do is offer what you have, and if they're not interested, they're not interested. Maybe they'll come in and try it out, and you'll be able to change their mind through example, but being able to just like manipulate them to do other things, all you can really do is ask them to give it a chance. And then hopefully possibly find people who do like V5. Maybe find new players in general. Go to your local game store and put a flyer up. That helps a lot. That helps with me trying to find new people. I remember not too long ago when V20 first came out. I can't really say not too long ago, can I? But when V20 first came out, myself and a few people who knew we were going to start up a V20 LARP, we put flyers out about a month ahead at local game shops, and then utilized one of those rooms at the local game shops to do a character building session. We ended up having a good 20 people who showed up, and we were able to start a nice sizable LARP. And we had a lot of fun, and the LARP lasted a really long time until the world just didn't permit it anymore. So I'm sorry that you've come across that kind of situation. I really am. I've been there. I mean, I get messages every once in a while on the YouTube channel of just like, V5 sucks, long live V20. You're always going to have the haters. But just do what you love. Use the system that you like and try to have fun with it. Don't let anybody change your mind about the system you want to run. Also, try V20 if you want to run a V20. Is it the story that you like in V5, or is it the mechanics? I personally love the mechanics and the story, so that's why I run this. But it's always come down to what the players want, because I'm the forever storyteller. I'm sorry if that was a lot of back and forth information, because it really is situational. But just, you know, put it out there. Let them know that you want to try it, and those who want to play will play. I'm butchering this name, but Oriangina Forever 20 asks, how do you deal with character creation for player POV after years of being a storyteller? That's actually kind of interesting. It's one of the things that I do differently that most people were shocked about when I talked to them about the convention. When I build my SBCs, I build them as if I was building a player character. I've never not done that. When I want to bring in an NPC, sometimes it's, you know, off the seat of my pants, I'm mentioning this guy and bringing him in, or I'm bringing this lady in, she's going to be awesome, or this individual needs to come in for this specific reason. But like, if it's going to be a character that sticks around for a good amount of time, I have a character sheet for them. And I built them in the exact same way that players built their characters. This helps me to understand who they are, where they came from, what their like. I actually have feeding types for my NPCs. Most NPCs that I've seen that are in the books don't even bother having predator types for the SPCs. I think that's important. Knowing exactly who the person is, it's the same way, one way or the other, whether from a player point of view or a storyteller point of view. So if you're having trouble coming up with NPCs, find out what NPCs needed to fit the niche in your city and build it like a regular player character. I hope that answers the question. I'm not 100% sure if I'm understanding the question right. How do you deal with character creation from player point of view after years of being a storyteller? Yeah, my storyteller characters are built the exact same way as my player characters. And I don't get to play very often, but when I do, I still go for the long time goal, the same thing as my SPCs. So now we got the marathon of DJ's questions. DJ asks, as a storyteller, how do you prep for your game? Where do you like to get your prep information from? Do you use sources outside of the official or unofficial World of Darkness sources? Alright, well, that's actually a lot of fun. First off, I run what I like to call canon adjacent. I run stories that run directly aside from canon. I don't like to limit myself on what may happen later, but most of the information I use is directly from World of Darkness sources as far as the outer world goes. Knowing the city that the game is set in is massively, massively important to me, and Wikipedia and YouTube have become massive, massive helps when it comes to this kind of thing. My games that I run are primarily set in Portland, Oregon, and I have been running my games set in Portland, Oregon for going on 20 years now. I like the area. It's strange. It has so much weird geography, and the people are strange, and the neighborhoods are almost fantasy if you just look at it. And it also has some dark troubles in real life that get amplified in the World of Darkness lens. That's why I like Portland so much. And I go on YouTube and I watch city tours that people take. People trying to sell real estate in Portland will tend to make half-hour videos where they wander around and show you how beautiful the neighborhoods are. And every city has things like this. History Channel. You can actually go on YouTube right now or go on historychannel.com, type in the name of the city that you're trying to do with History Channel on it, and you might find out that you have an episode of Cities of the Underworld, which will tell you like historical facts about the city that people don't like to talk about. But when I'm running a game that's like if I'm hired to run it, if I'm hired to come to somebody's house and run a game, I typically ask them where they want to run, how they would like to do it. In this way, I have run real cities, fictional cities. I've run fictionalized real cities. And it really has to do with, like, most people like to run their games in or around the area that they live in personally. One of my favorite games that I got to run for a little while was set in Naples, Florida. In which case, I knew of a game that I played in that ended up taking place in Naples, and I utilized a lot of information that I got from that past game just because there were already characters there that I kind of got. There were SPCs that were located in that area where I knew where they would be. So I've also gone a little bit beyond that. I tend to contact the original storytellers and go, hey, do you mind if I use this concept that you used? And I've never had anybody say no. But doing that also, I've been lucky enough to have people who have given me old material that they still had, notebooks, Rubbermaid tubs full of old character sheets and stuff like that I was able to update to V5 and things like that. It's getting the inspiration on how to run the city can be also what the characters want. Also, what lore sheets are people taking? What influences are people taking? These are the things that need to shine the heaviest in the game, because your players, through building their character sheet, are showing you exactly what they want to experience in that game. So there's a lot of ways of doing it. If you're looking for just basic city information, like I said, YouTube street tours and things like that are always going to be so helpful to know where things are. Going online on Google Maps and just like looking up the actual street names can be very, very helpful and immersive. Being able to pull up a picture on your phone and go, the building that you're standing in front of looks like this. That can be something that is just that little bit more of a, oh, I see it. I understand now. Also, try not to go too heavy on the supernatural in these games. I know that's really hard to say because we're playing a game based around the supernatural, but like you can clog up the airwaves when it comes to things. Vampire interaction with human, werewolf interaction with human, hunter interaction with other people can be a great way of driving a story. How much prep to your chronicles and sessions do you do? How much do you simply do off the top of your head? Do you use SPCs that are fully written and have full stats? Do you just decide SPC pools and stats as you play? Or something in between? Something in between, really. Like I said earlier, it's so much better to have like a full character sheet as if it was a player character that you're working with. Now, obviously, sometimes your SPCs, if they're older and stronger for some reason, are going to have more points. So, yeah, you're not going to have like a perfectly balanced game of SPCs and PCs. But it's really about being able to think on your feet. I do plan out typically a single scene per session. That's something that I've found myself doing since I started tabletopping, which was not that long ago. Like I said, I'm a born and raised LARP boy. But I have noticed that since I started running a tabletop game, there's always one scene that I want to see happen in a night. And I don't have any like major plans for it or how it even happens. It's just I know I really want that to happen. those scenes I always think of, like, I play through them in my head. I never know exactly what's going to happen because the players are just going to throw curveballs. And that's the idea, is like, they think that they're trying to defend against you most of the time, but in reality, you're trying to defend against them. You don't know what weird stuff they're going to do. They're the X factor. They're the things that makes you go by the seat of your pants. I don't typically just make up stats on the fly, unless I'm introducing a new SPC that was important to be made right then. Other than that, I typically use human stats that are in the books if I'm running a human. If I'm running some random vampire that I've never used before, I try to be careful not to go, well, this person obviously has obviously has 5 points in potence and 5 points in celerity and 5 points in presence, and this Brujah's gonna beat you down. I try not to do that kind of thing, because I'm not there to make it so that my players aren't having fun. I have fun because I'm trying to keep up with them. My stuff is usually so much weaker than they have any idea about. And that actually comes to, that actually brings me to something that really isn't part of this question, but I feel like it should be answered here, is that I give my SPCs XP for what they're doing, for what they're accomplishing. They're growing as the players are growing. But I don't go XP dump every once in a while. I just add a point here and there. I give them a fair amount of XP from what I believe they should have for what they're accomplishing. So they do grow pretty steady as far as the players are concerned as well. So I think about my games a lot. I try to make sure that if I have handouts or something like that, I have that made so that the players can go, oh, he handed me the folder that has a note in it. Like, it's very fun to watch them trying to do things. At one point in time, I actually had, I think we were playing the Sacrifice, the Chicago by Night La Sombra introduction, and there was a letter that was being passed to the prince that was sealed with wax, and the player characters took about 10 minutes to try to find a way to to open it without breaking the seal, so they could reseal it and give it to him, but still were just that nosy. And there was a level of pride that I had watching them trying to figure this stuff out, and it slowed the story down, but it also upped the intrigue. It made it so much more interesting. So if there's props or something like that, I do take time to try and make sure they have something physical that they can hold. But like, I never plan scene by scene. I never know what the players are going to do. I've done that once, and I was horribly, horribly disappointed in the situation because I wasted weeks of planning just to get things the way that I wanted it to, and it never did get that way, because that's not the point of the storyteller. The point of the storyteller is to try to give them the ability to go wherever they need to go, and you can't plan for that. You have no idea what your players are going to do unless they're talking to you about it, and I personally think that takes away a lot of the fun. So I try to come up with something, but for the most part, I'm constantly trying to play catch up against my players. How much does your city setting play in your chronicle? Is the city just a backdrop for the story, or is the city a larger part of the tale? The city is a character in and of itself. You have no idea what the city is going to do. I love playing in the game that I run, primarily because Portland is just such a strange place. I can get away with doing so many weird things in that city without anybody raising an eyebrow, simply because that's the way that Portland works. It's a strange, odd place that just like, you're just like, well, that's Portland. It's just how it is. But there's also like how much the city is hurting. What are the scars that the city is feeling? How do the people survive in this city? Who's in charge? What's going on? For those of you who are paying attention to my recap, you'll know right now, as far as you know, the mayor is a Fomore. How many cities in America are run by politicians who are possessed in some fashion, power-grubbing night denizens? The story of the city itself is very important. I try to make my cities fit as close I can to the real areas, because I've had those players who have been like, oh, I've been in that park. Oh, I've been in that building. I've been on that floor. I've stood right here. When I went to Atlanta, Georgia, for a pagan conference a while ago, I took the time, the vlogs are on my channel if you want to look them up. They're the very first World of Darkness vlogs I've done. I took the time to go to sites that were set in the Fall of Atlanta series, in the Clan novels. And I got to stand in the area where the Sabbat attacked the High Museum. Your city needs to have life of its own. The idea of it just being the backdrop of, oh, well, you're walking into this building. What is it? It's just a building. What is it? What is that building? Is it abandoned? Is it active? Is it neglected? There's so many different things that you really should start thinking about. What does your city smell like? What does it sound like? Is there constant horrible overture of traffic in the background? Is it desolate? Or is there just like rows and rows of homeless camps all over the place? How do the authorities of the city treat this? I would say that your city should play one of the largest parts in your tale, because where it doesn't have its own ambitions and drives as a thing, it is still trying to survive the ambitions and drives of everything that's in it. So yes, definitely, your city, my city at least, in my games, are a huge part of what is happening in the World of Darkness itself. How much freedom do you allow your players? Do you like to keep to raw rules as written? Do you allow just about anything custom, unofficial? Or do you fall somewhere in between? I fall somewhere in between. I like the rules as written, but like I can tell you, on the very first night that we started running this game for what it is, Thicker Than Water for what it is, the first thing that we did was change a rule, which was saying that the blood stays active an hour after it's outside of the vampire's body. The idea of having to ghoul someone, blood bond someone directly from you, but it's only a level 1 blood bond? Yeah, you might have pleasant thoughts about a person, but you're going to like speak up if somebody jammed their cut open arm into your mouth and said, drink it. Like, there are rules that I follow, but there's also rules that I'm just like, I don't think so. My vampires in my games are allowed to use armor. Rules as written says that the vampires can't use armor. That doesn't make any sense to me. Why would them being a vampire stop armor from working? That doesn't make any sense. We've also used a few powers that are in supplements that were written by communities. I had a couple of Sabbat players that got to come in and play characters that were reformed, quote-unquote, reformed Sabbat. And we used the Sabbat Player's Guide that was written by Khaldun Khalil and his friends, who worked with World of Darkness to create the Sabbat book for antagonists, but also wanted to put something out there for players. You really just need to run with what's good for you. We've considered going like and using custom thaumaturgy and things like that in my game, and some things get talked about and then just don't ever get used. But we do talk about being able to use things that are not raw, as it's said, you know, rules as written, because there are so many things that could work if you choose to explore them. You can also just drop it at any point in time and say that it's a fluke of the blood if it doesn't work. So yes, my game does allow my players to have a little bit more freedom when it comes to that stuff. I let them try experimental things. We're using stuff from books that aren't quite even published yet, that rules could change at any point in time. So, yeah, I guess I would have to say that I'm a little bit more open with the freedom of the players, letting them do what they want. But there are things that I try to stick to. The idea of touchstones and convictions and letting them try to explain away the tenets and things like that that's good. But having that background structure of rules is always nice. A fallback spot on where exactly things are coming from, how things are going. But I do allow them to explore. But if we're going to introduce anything that's not rules as written, we tend to have a pre-game conversation about it. And we'll go over the rules and discuss, do we like this? Do we want to allow this in our game? So the panel of players is a very democratic system in my game. And finally, how much do you let the dice tell the story? Do you like to have the players rolling dice often or very little? Do you like to forgo dice results if you or your players feel it doesn't fit the scene? I'd have to say that we listen to the chance, but the idea of the narrative is always going to be more important. We've had nights where we've played where 0 dice throws have been done at all, except for like hunger and stuff like that at the beginning. The dice are not important, but they are there as a way of showing the chance of things. If somebody is capable of doing something, and I think that like they could do it without a test, I don't even make them throw the tests. I think V5 is actually built for that type of storytelling anyway. Most of, if not all, disciplines succeed no matter what, as long as they're unopposed. So I would say that we don't really allow the dice to tell the story. We tell the story. But when it comes to outside opposition, that's when the dice come in. When it comes to trying to figure out how much information is gained from an investigation, that's when the dice come into play. But I don't want to let the dice rule. The only time that I could ever say that I do that is sheer numbers, trying to decide how many people are here, how much ineptitude is involved. Things like that. I try not to allow the dice to be primary. If the players forget they have dice and everybody still has fun, I feel like I've done a good job. But we do have the rule that we have dice trays. And if a dice is rolled, if dice are rolled, then if it doesn't land in the dice tray, then it doesn't count. I don't care if you've rolled a messy critical. I don't care if you completely botched it. It doesn't matter. If you do not get your dice in that tray, it does not count at all. And you cannot move them until after it has been established what you got. But yeah, no, we don't let the dice run the game. I run the game. No, my players and I, we tell a story, and no little chunks of plastic are going to decide anything that's not just randomness. Now, there are awesome resources out there for those people who are learning how to storytell, or are alone and have to roleplay by themselves, which is a thing. Such as our dear Lore by Night guy, who wrote this amazing book, which I have a copy of. I bought it off of the Storyteller's Vault, called The Autarkist Storyteller, which literally is you running a game through dice. It comes out with every single thing. It lets the dice guide your story, so you can actually play if you're all alone. You can actually play if you and your friends want to play together and not have like a direct storyteller. And it's such a great thing. I have it, and like I wanted to do a video on it. I really should just make it a regular review. But I found myself getting so entrapped in the book and in the stories that it was coming up with, that everything from creating a character to going through full chronicles can be done with this system. I don't personally use that because the thing that I enjoy the most about this is being able to let my imagination run wild and to blend with the others at my table. But it's such a great thing if that's your style. And even as somebody who does things for himself, I had a blast using it. So no, I do not let the dice run my game. Myself and those at my table are the ones who tell the story. Anyway, so that actually went a lot longer than I thought it would. I want to thank everybody who submitted a question. Thank you, DJ, also, who submitted 5. And I enjoyed doing this. And if you guys are interested in doing this again, send me more. When I have 10 questions, I'll do another one. Why not? This was a lot of fun. I will try not to do any repeats though. But that is what this was. This is just a storyteller Q&A to get out my way of doing things, my style. If anybody has any other questions, please ask. I'll answer. And yeah, maybe we'll do this more often. We'll see what the night brings. Anyway, I am Voivode Maquette. Thank you for joining me in this Q&A session, and I will see you next time. Good evening.